I want to start with something that is going all over the place. It's viral. In fact, there was a video of Robert Kennedy taking this, methylene blue.
I do some consulting with a group involved with RFK, so different story. But back to methylene blue. We're in this renaissance right now in our age where we can basically fix any problem. Talking about Jay, I just did his seminar in Tampa. My whole presentation was biohacking the future, and in quotes, it was, we have the tools to fix anything. We basically can. I tore my quad. Literally that night, I had a bolus of growth hormone and growth hormone peptides. More than I want to say on air, but dozens of vials, literally. Okay. And what I did, I occluded the area first. So extra blood flow, extra oxygen, extra nutrition. It hurt pretty bad, by the way. All these applications. And then I sat in front of red light and near-infrared light therapy to activate the mitochondria in that area. I would then rotate that off with test coils at the time, because I didn't have Lakovsky coils at the time, to alter the millivoltage change of those cells to start to push the muscle back to the bone. And then I would wrap it for an hour. And I would do rotating therapies for over those multiple weeks of near-infrared for an hour and then rotate with the different coils to change the voltage.
And in 4 weeks, you grew back?
Yeah, it's perfect.
All right, what about the bodybuilder? Or somebody's like, I want to build an incredibly aesthetic physique. What does that look like? What are their priorities when it comes to some of those things?
Okay, so in that whole physique-based world.
Alex, welcome to the show. You came highly recommended by our friend Jay Campbell, which I respect him a lot. So when he says somebody knows their stuff, I definitely trust him. I want to start with something that is going all over the place. It's viral. In fact, there was a video of Robert Kennedy taking this, methylene blue. What is it? What does it do? Why is everybody talking about this?
Why are we concerned about this? Yeah.
I do some consulting with a group involved with RFK, so different story. But back to methylene blue. Wow, what doesn't it do, right? So anytime you talk about any kind of drug, supplement, whatever, it always does multiple actions. So methylene blue, if you look what it has the potential to do, it can drive up cerebral metabolic rate, crazy amount. So as an overall like nootropic aid, it's kind of one thing. It'll modulate the electron transport chain pretty crazily. So as overall energetic aid, there's another one. It'll drive direct fat loss. It can drive indirect anabolism. It can literally start to drive. So it'll be a cool driver of pushing drugs into tumors. So if you have a cancer, you can pair with other compounds that are hyperoxygenate and push those drugs into the tumors. You can activate with some light. You can do a ton of different things. So you look at it as kind of like there's a lot of drugs out there like that. They're kind of like miracles. They really are. We're in this renaissance right now in our age where we can basically fix any problem. Talking about Jay, I just did his seminar in Tampa. My whole presentation was biohacking the future. And in quotes, it was, we have the tools to fix anything. We basically can, because there's tools like methylene blue.
What is methylene blue? Was it a food dye?
Blue dye, yep.
And how long have we had? Like, what is it exactly?
Forever. It's been around forever. It started off again as that dye, and then they started seeing some different interactions with, again, the electron transport chain. And then all of a sudden you start to realize, oh, there's a lot of carrier spillover. It gets more research, and it kind of goes from there.
Okay, and so now explain the electron transfer. Why is that a good thing? What are we looking at?
Yeah, so if we're looking at energetics, how we get ATP, right? It's all about how we transfer those electrons down a different chain. So you spit off some hydrogen, throw off some oxygen, you eventually get ATP.
Okay.
It will improve that entire process upstream, whereas metformin does it more downstream from a complex standpoint.
Okay, so it'll enhance your body's ability to create ATP, which is one of the primary sources of energy for all of your mitochondria.
That paired with creatine, is there any benefits? I mean, pairing that with something like creatine, would that do anything else?
So actually, yeah, from a neuroinflammatory standpoint, another thing you can do with methylene blue is use it to reverse TBIs, any kind of like Parkinson's, dementia, Alzheimer's. This morning, I actually took 50 grams of creatine because I slept 12 hours since Thursday. So from an overall neuroinflammation standpoint, bring that down so I can function properly. So you pair that with methylene blue, which I also took this morning, pulls down even further neuroinflammation, and you're operating like normal, independent of that lymphatic system. When we sleep, the lymphatic system cleans your brain, right? Mm-hmm. If you don't sleep, you're not really getting that cleaning. So this kind of like gives you some leeway there from a cleaning aspect.
You said 50 grams?
Creatine, yeah.
Yeah, so I read that taking a big dose, a bolus of creatine after being sleep deprived helps a lot. But I didn't know it's like 50 grams is a lot. I mean, you're a big dude. Is that based off your lean body mass?
I've tried it a lot. So the traditional 5 grams creatine, 10 grams creatine, it's awesome. But look at all the research. It's the cheapest molecule out there that does everything. So I always have my individuals work it up. 15 grams, 20 grams, 25. You'll either have a point of diminishing return where more's not better, or you have the GI problems. So once you run into one of those things, like for me, I take 20 to 30 grams daily intra-workout.
Every single day.
How are you measuring the return on that? Like, say you're dosing me right now. Like, what are we watching for you to go like, okay, that's it. No more. You don't need more.
the metabolic changes. So are you gaining muscle tissue easier? Are you losing body fat faster? Look at the performance-based changes because it's recycling ATP, right? You can look at all the things that creatine has to offer, and you'll get to a point where you're like, I'm not really seeing anything else. Like I'm not stronger in the gym. I'm not leaner. I'm not bigger. That's when you just say you pull it back by 5 grams. Okay. Or you take it and you're like, pooping your brains out, have that in that diuretic-based effect and diarrhea-based effect. Yeah. Okay, too much pullback. Or you could switch to like some of the different ester versions, but usually traditional creatine monohydrate, pretty much good to go, and you work it up based on your response.
You just justified me snacking on these creatine gummies all day.
I've already been eating them. That's literally what Nsima said. When I was on Mark Bell's podcast last year, he was snacking them because I didn't know about creatine gummies. Yeah. So he goes, I can eat these. I was like, I have a couple, sound good.
Oh my God. That's awesome. So I heard back to methylene blue, it's an MAOI inhibitor as well. Yep. What is that?
Monoamine oxidase inhibitor.
Right. Now, aren't there prescription drugs that are like that for things like depression?
Exactly. Yeah, so it'll basically modulate the breakdown of all those monoamines. So if you look at neurochemistry as a whole, certain things that can drive alertness, focus, dopaminergic, serotonergic cascades, it's modulating that. So it's essentially preventing the breakdown. So you have more in that synaptic cleft to actually do action.
Okay. So, and what does that feel like then when you're starting to inhibit that?
Usually for most people, good. So again, everyone's different, right? No matter what, every conversation is through a lens of that individual. So certain people get that hyperstimulation neurologically. I think that's what you said, right? Like it was like too much.
It was like, I got hyper trying methylene blue for sure.
Yep. So then usually if that's your case, pull the doses down.
Bring it down.
It's usually a dosage problem. I've seen as low as 1 milligram and upwards of like 150 milligrams. So the range,
that's a huge range,
depending on what you're looking for, like if you're in like the clinical setting and there's, hemochromatosis or there's other like actual real diseases, they'll dose it up like 150 milligrams IV. They'll do a bunch of different doses. So you have a huge range. At home though, most people are about 1 milligram to 40. Depending on the actual response and goal.
What are the side effects? Any negative side effects aside from maybe, it's too much, I'm too
Does anything down-regulate and then you get addicted to it? You have to use it, like anything like that?
A lot of these compounds work so well, you can't get addicted to the effects, but there's no direct like cocaine and amphetamine receptor regulation. So usually it's not an addictive-based problem. But if you have to really dig into the research for this, there's some potential for it to have some renal failure-like effects. It's 0.0000001% of people. I have only said, I believe, one time in 13, 14 years. It's because there's a specific genetic mutation. But again, that just does not happen. You don't see that. That's the only negative effect of it.
What did they notice? Was it just blood work and they saw that their
EGFR goes from like 85 to like 40 overnight.
Okay. And then that person's like, okay, this isn't for you, basically.
Exactly. Stop taking it, EGFR goes right back up.
Okay. Now, because it's an MAOI inhibitor, are people on antidepressants or people who already taken MAOI inhibitor, should they be careful?
Definitely if they're taking anything. So any kind of nootropic compound, remember, we have to find your own perfect neurochemistry. So how do you respond to dopamine, serotonin? How do you respond to norepinephrine? You're trying to figure out, so if you have a stack, like I was showing you guys beforehand in my bag of 30 different things, you have to know how they cross interact. So methylene blue, if you're taking anything that's going to affect your brain, will also affect that. HRT, for example, will also change that voltage effect in the brain. So then it can also potentiate that. If you're taking traditional peptides that'll also affect the brain, it can also affect that. So you're trying to slowly either start low on the dose or slowly layer things in or pull them out because there can always be cross indications.
All right, before we continue, what's your background? Like, how do you know all this stuff? For Jay to say that somebody knows way more than he does, and
did he say way more than him too?
Jay's like, this guy knows more than anybody I know. This and that. Obviously, talking to you now, you definitely are well educated on this, and I know you work with a lot of people who will only hire the best. I guess I could say that loosely. What's your background? How do you know all this stuff?
So had my master's, was posting on the bodybuilding.com forums back then. It was big. I was getting into bodybuilding myself, and I was going to go get my PhD, working in a human performance research lab. And I was like, you know what? I'm working 60 hours a week at a gym right now. I'm making more money just, off of the online coaching. Let's see if that's a thing. And then let's not spend the extra money on, a PhD if I don't need to. And again, that was 13 years ago. And it started off in bodybuilding, spilled over into powerlifting strongman. Then a friend of a friend is actually helping this one older lady. She had renal failure, liver failure, like a bunch of different problems, diabetes. And I fixed her and she goes, oh, you could probably help my son. He's a pretty good athlete. And so I start talking with him and I go, oh, wait a minute. You're in the NBA, aren't you? And I actually started with there where, he's a pretty good athlete because how moms are. Yeah. And so we started working in there, and then it literally was word of mouth. It spilled over into the NFL, over into every professional sport. I had 23 people at the Paris Olympics, 6 of them medaled. Actually, after that, I woke up last year and after we got gold the last day, I had 400 messages. And I'm like, great, I got spammed. So I'm deleting. I read one of the messages. I'm like, oh my God, these are real people. And so it started off there. And from an education standpoint, I just love learning. So I read every book, I read every research study, but more importantly than that, how it actually applies in reality. So every time I have a client check-in or I hear a certain anecdote from someone like BPC 157 we were talking about beforehand, I have over 15,000 case studies in a chart where I've taken every single effect we've seen, every dosage range. I can compile that. And I've done that with every supplement and drug and everything out there. So I have this database of learning not just what happens or what could happen on paper, but also what happens in reality. Because that's where it really kind of got me excited, right? Because it doesn't matter what it says in a research study. Research is awesome. But what's actually happening in our biology today? Because we can go in a different tangent with that, but that's kind of where everything started.
How common is it for people at those high levels of performance, professional sports, definitely bodybuilding? I don't think I need to ask this for bodybuilding, but how often is it that they have someone like you that helps them on the side that isn't necessarily just their, oh, it's just my doctor or whatever, but it's like, this is my coach that goes down these rabbit holes. And
I'm the nutrition coach in many corners, you know? All the time.
Really?
All the time. I work with a lot of celebrities. Again, just pretty much every different sport out there I'm a part of. And then whether you're drug tested or not, like take like the big professional sports out there where there's millions and millions of dollars on the line, you better be doing something to improve your performance because you're making millions upon millions of dollars. Now, again, that doesn't mean the traditional testosterones of the world. There's all these different peptides. There's so many things too, because you don't have to break the rules. In those sports, we just don't take what's on the banned substance list. So you're not breaking any rules. You're doing things legally. I'm just kind of 10 steps ahead of the curve or synthesizing new things that aren't even out there yet. Like SLU, I brought into the market like 6 years ago with all my athletes, and it just got big over the past year or so. And so we've had that. We actually have someone to synthesize it, get it. It was a whole hassle, but that was years. Same thing with so many compounds. So you were just staying ahead of the curve to work with those people so they don't get in trouble.
How quickly can you tell that you're going to really be able to help like one of these athletes? You do an assessment with them, find out about their diet, find out their stuff like that. Like how quick is it for you to go like, oh, I'm going to be able to dial this up, dial that up and make a big difference?
Like a picosecond.
Really?
I'm honestly, not like to sound like arrogant or cocky. I don't think there's a biological problem we can't fix. And if there is, I would be more motivated to fix it because I'm be the first one to do it.
Yeah.
So whether it's the athlete, the cancer patient, like to me, it's all just a problem to fix. And it's so much fun. You dig into the research, you dig into the books, you dig into basic biology even more so. You look at all the other, that's where all the case studies really come in for me. If I can't figure out a problem, like, okay, what have I seen across the spectrum with this drug? Where do we see this problem being fixed or, whatever we're actually talking about there? So to me, like, I honestly don't think there's much that we can't reverse. Unless if you're like on the ground dead, brain's completely like blown off, your head's blown off your head, off your shoulders. I mean, I think we could pretty much reverse it all.
Wow. And so do you work, you obviously work with athletes and high level executives and individuals. Do you work with people who are dealing with things like chronic illness, autoimmune diseases and those types of things?
All the above. Yeah. Like, I mean, we all know all the long COVID stuff. Like back in the day, whenever COVID really hit and the virus and all that kind of stuff, if you were just taking a low dose nicotine, which we're talking about later on today, it would modulate how the receptor would bind in the actual neural tissue, and then you wouldn't get that long COVID neural inflammation.
Let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah, sorry.
Wait.
No, I remember the data coming out showing that nicotine was protective against COVID, and it got buried, and everybody said it's conspiracy theory. That's terrible. So talk about that
So
for
you're
a
telling
second.
me like cigarette smokers had a better chance with the COVID going on?
Well, there's an offset by the smoke, but
Okay.
Well, yeah, and it's also dose dependent, right? So you're smoking like 3 packs a day. You're getting way more nicotine than you need. All you're trying to do is occupy that nicotinic receptor in neural tissue so that actual COVID can't bind there. So COVID
it's blocking it.
Exactly. Yeah. So it just stayed occupied. So literally 0.5 milligram, 1 milligram, you did not need much. You just needed to occupy that receptor. So the smokers, because they were taking 15 milligrams, 20 milligrams, it also then downregulated the immune system, and then it probably also hurt them.
Yeah.
But then did we have cases of like the people that, because I got big in the gym just like a few years back where, people are doing the pockets or what's that brand?
Zen patches.
Zen.
Yeah, the Zen. Yeah.
Yeah, Zen pat.
Yeah, they're awesome. They're awesome. To me, it's always a dosage problem where you have 7 a day. Probably not the best thing for you from a blood pressure vascular aspect, but you have 1 or a milligram, I think that's like the sweet spot is for a lot of things.
Oh, wow.
What are the benefits then of nicotine? Because this is interesting. You know what's funny about that, by the way? I brought this up 5 years ago to these guys, and I said, I noticed that I've been reading about the nootropic effects of nicotine. And I think that this is going to eventually become kind of a thing. We actually even considered, at some point working with it, but then we decided not to. What are the the effects and, let's say, benefits of nicotine. And of course, the administration is very important. You're not talking about smoking a cigarette typically when you recommend nicotine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We're generally not smoking anything because that's still in the lungs, causing damage. Like, we're going to avoid away from the smoke. The lozenges, the patch-ins, like whenever you travel, put a little nicotine patch on, what's it going to do? Occupy that receptor. That COVID molecule, if it's out there, it's not going to bind. It also has potentials to kill the flu virus. So you start looking at the nootropic benefits as well, like you said, and it's that nicotinic-based receptor in neural tissue. So it'll start hyper-driving neural action. So the problem with that, though, is it works so well, which is part of the problem. You'll burn through acetylcholine. You'll burn through all of the traditional ketones and neural glucose. Remember, our brain produces its own insulin. So it hyperdrives that process as well. And then your brain just goes. So as long as you're fueling properly, you can keep up with that nicotinic reaction, pretty much good to go. But you always have to remember about fueling because like this is like a high tier nootropic. It works that well.
Backed by popular demand, we are going to do a giveaway. The RGB bundle, MAPS Anabolic, MAPS Performance, MAPS Aesthetic. One of you viewers will win access to all of them, but you have to like this, subscribe, turn on notifications, and put a comment below. It's got to be a positive one. Do it. Also, final hours for the brand new program sale. So MAPS Transform was just launched. It's a 90-day transformational program. Go from before to after. Because it's a brand new program, it's $70 off, and we're including 2 free things. Adam's 90-day body recomp journal and the MAPS Transformation Diet Guide. Those are both for free because it's a brand new program. So if you want the $70 off and the 2 freebies, go to mapstransform.com and then use the code TRANSFORM70. All right, here comes the show. What about the addictive properties of, because it is a classic, it does have classic addictive properties. Where does it rank by itself? Because I know cigarettes have their own additional addictive properties because of the action in using them. Yeah. But in comparison to something like caffeine, where would it rank with its addictive properties?
If we're looking at use versus abuse, that's what it comes down to. Okay. So if you're taking it every single day at a higher dose, you become normalized to that. And then if you come off, your day's terrible. You have no energy, no neural input. So it's usually always the dosage or the duration and the frequency. So like the nicotines, the methylene blues, like they have a place to be a daily therapy, but almost all the time we're taking it in infrequent fashion. So you're elevating your baseline. So we're trying to get you on those days, hyper driving your neural system. And then when you come off, if you do that long enough, your body's used to actually driving at that high neural input. So you're like, okay, you have to elevate. So you can do those rotational strategies to make sure that over time you're elevating your baseline. So you don't have to take anything. Like that's the whole point, right? We don't want to take something and replace it. We want to drive up the underlying system. We want to make the enzyme system better. We want to drive ribosomes harder. Like we want to make sure we're operating at a higher frequency. That's really what that comes down to. So it's usually the frequency of action.
So give me an example where if you're training an athlete or competitor, and I don't know how different it would be for the two of them, how are you cycling something like the methylene blue or the nicotine in their programming? It's like, are you trying to peak it? And so you're, okay, we're getting ready for prep. And so it's these times of the year, or if you're an athlete, they get ready for competition. How are you typically programming the cycle in there?
You could do a very simple rotation if we only look at those 2 compounds and nothing else, where you can pick out your 2 hardest days of the week. We'd implement methylene blue that morning. We're doing that to drive up cerebral metabolic rate. It's going to, again, indirectly drive through all the ATP cascades, more fat loss, more anabolism, pretty much something all athletes need, right? We have that on the 2 hardest days. Ideally, they're separated, right? Because you're not going to do 2 crazy workout back-to-back days. So that's a Monday, Thursday. Then maybe you do like a Tuesday, Friday on some other workouts whenever they're just not as high tier. Maybe like you're more of an alactic athlete. You're looking at more like the glycolytic days. That's whenever you bring in the nicotine because you don't need as much neural stimulus. You don't need as much ability to flux nutrients. You just need that like background elevation, and then maybe quarantine on other days. Or you got tons of other options, but usually that infrequent, like 1 to time per week frequency is enough to stimulate and get your baseline up. But not so much to where you can, that's that dependent based effect.
What have you found in terms of memory recall? And I know for me, like playing football and having a lot of head impacts, and I've been on this quest to repair and kind of help to bring cognition back. And there's stuff like Dihex out there, and there's some
my bag.
I saw that and I was like, wow, yeah, I'm on that. But just finding more options for me in terms of like, how you would put that together. And like you mentioned methylene blue, you mentioned, nicotine. And so all these things to help kind of with brain function. Like, what does that look like to help kind of restore?
Like you?
Yeah. For idiots that, smash their head all the time.
It's funny you said that though. So in high school, I had a TBI and I couldn't walk, talk, or eat for 6 months. So I was the traditional therapy of go to the dark room and do nothing.
Okay.
I remember I was shooting a goal for lacrosse and I remember waking up in my bed and I'm like, my ribs, my face, like what happened to me? I stumbled to the bathroom and I lost like 50 pounds. I was like, what happened?
Whoa.
I lost 6 months of my life. It took me years to recall all those memories, to remember parents feeding me, to remember trying to, I actually scored a goal in that game. I had that hit that caused the concussion and I got up and I just kept moving, but I don't remember any of it. And then eventually I scored a goal and I just collapsed. So I was on the same quest because I was a naturally just unintelligent person, poor memory, and then the TBI on top of that. I was kind of like, that's not too cool. I got to fix that. So the list of methylene blue to the nicotines, adding them in that fashion, that low-dosed fashion, look at repairing your cerebral system as well. Something like a cerebral lysin would then come in because it has every neurotrophic factor out there. So we're driving neural repair from multiple different levels. Because as you're driving that processing speed, remember, everything on our body is plastic, right? So it can be changed. So you can hypertrophy or atrophy, anything, any organ, any tissue, it doesn't matter. You can change any cell. So in the brain-based world, they used to think that after 40, right? They said like you couldn't learn after that, your brain stopped growing.
Right.
It's like, no, you can always progress. And so in the neural world, you're trying to literally hypertrophy your brain. You're trying to actually grow your brain to function better, fire more neurons, recall more memories, speak better, everything.
Now you mentioned plastic though. Have you seen the latest? They're finding the microplastics in the brain. And
oh yeah, I was talking like plasticity, like neuroplasticity.
Yeah, I know. I'm shifting.
I got you. Yeah, there you go. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, do you?
I thought it was a TBI kicking in.
No, I'm not making a wrong association there. No, I was actually just curious because they're talking about that might be a contributor to dementia. And is there any way to counter that or to
Clean
get
it
rid
out?
of it? Yeah, clean it out.
Yeah, a lot of things. So there's a really cool product out there from Wizard Sciences, and he has a lot of carbon-60 products. You guys ever heard of carbon-60? So lipofullerenes, they're super cool. They do a bunch of different things. Imagine it traversing the mitochondria and kind of acting like a straw to pull off the oxidative load from mitochondria. So it'll wedge itself in there and just pull oxidative load globally. So as an overall like repair molecule, like we had a deer by our house that got hit actually. Felt bad, so I actually went through a whole quest to like heal it. Healed it in like 6 weeks with SLU and carbon-60. I snuck it into some apples, got it to trust me. And carbon-60 pulls off that oxidative load dramatically. So then you bind it with a fat. If you do like linoleic acid, it'll go more global, more cell-wide. If you do acrylic acid, where's it going? Banging off the liver, beta-hydroxybutyrate to the brain. So then you use it to drive your own endogenous ketone production. So Wizard Sciences, shout out to them. They have awesome products. It's in a fat. So it's bound to that caprylic acid.
Coconut oil?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Oh, wow.
So they'll have that C8, I believe, right?
Yeah.
And then it'll drive that neurological process and it'll start to actually pull the oxidative load out of your brain. So whether that's coming from plastics or anything like that, there's also, there's a couple of products like NMN, PQQ, so pulling off the fibrin content and really driving that lymphatic system. So if you can look at like dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, all these neurological diseases, there's always the amyloid plaque conversation, right? The plaques aren't bad. That's the same fat that's around your stomach. That's the thing that sequesters toxins and makes sure it doesn't get global because it just causes more problems.
So it's more of a side effect than a cause.
Exactly, yeah. So the amyloid plaques are more than fine, but what they're holding's bad. So if you were to drive that lymphatic system, which is when you sleep, it bathes your brain in blood, cerebral spinal fluid, all that kind of fun stuff. If you could just hyperdrive that system, you get more recovery at night. That's where the PQQs come in. That's where the carbon-60 comes in. So to remove like microplastics from neural tissue, those products and carbon-60 as a whole is just absolutely awesome. And then the exogenous ketones come in because the exogenous ketones then are the basically like the cellular signals. They can drive all those actions. They can even go to the thymic gland, which after 30, we're all over 30, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So after 30, that thymic gland basically calcifies. You stop pumping out your own thymic peptides. You can basically reactivate that with like metformin and growth hormone. You can regrow it, but exogenous ketones can act as the intracellular aid to basically turn that thymic gland back on and start pumping out more endogenous peptides.
Regardless if you're not in ketosis, you can just add the exogenous ketones. It'll do that.
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's really interesting.
Oh, they're cool, yeah. Because then you can also use it as like that. Remember back in the day, what was it? The 2-fuel theory, like use glucose and ketones.
Yeah,
like that was talking about metabolic flexibility back in the day with was that Perillo, right? With carnitine and everything.
Yeah.
You can just take your exogenous ketones now. So like this morning, I'm sleep deprived. I want to make sure I'm operating good, not sounding like an idiot. I destroyed the buffet at my hotel. It was awesome. And then I had some exogenous ketones before we started. So in my brain right now, I have all of the glucose and the ketones, so I'll never run out of fuel. And then I have my shake right there if I need more.
Yeah. I thought it was worthless if you were already running on glucose. I did not know that.
Yeah, no. Yeah, you can use them both simultaneously.
I heard. Now you mentioned something called.
Man, I've been telling a company that's been coming after us for a long time. The ketone.
That's a different conversation.
We've been telling them to fly kite for a long time.
What's the cerebral lysin? What is that?
Yep.
I heard you mention that.
So amino acids come from pig's brain. The cool thing about it is it has every neurotrophic counterpart in there. So if we look at all those systems, glial cell derived, brain derived, everyone knows BDNF, right? Mm-hmm. There's these somatropic and these classical ones. So we have these 4 different families in this neurotrophic system. These neurotrophic compounds drive neural healing. So neural repair from every single aspect. Cerebral lysine really got a big name in the Alzheimer community and dementia. You'd use the IV 80 milliliters, 100 milliliters. It depends on, the person, the practitioner, all that kind of stuff. But as a low dose therapy, you can use that. Like for a lot of my entrepreneurs, for example, you're burning the candle at both ends, go crazy Monday through Friday. Upon waking Saturday and Sunday, low dose of cerebral lysine, literally just to drive the repair process of you crushing your brain throughout the week. It's a really cool player.
All right, you just mentioned you just mentioned your entrepreneurs. All right, let's go through a few avatars and what would be, obviously it's going to be dependent on the individual, but what are the common stacks for different kind of avatars? And let's start with the entrepreneur who wants kind of high performance, cognitive function, being sharp. They want to build their business. What are the kind of go-to peptide supplement stacks that you typically recommend to them?
Gotcha. So if we look first Monday through Friday, let's assume in this scenario for that entrepreneur, it's like crazy Monday through Friday, then they work a little Saturday and Sunday. Yeah. Entrepreneurs are working every single day, but you have to differentiate. Can't take everything every single day. So in this world, we would look, first of all, generally the bigger work days. So 3 days per week. Ideally for here, we'll say Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we can drive up that overall release of histamine from the lateral hypothalamus and orexin neuropeptides with something called modafinil. So modafinil is that thing that will drive that cerebral metabolic rate, actually not even the rate, but the actual firing of your brain, the potential dramatically. So that can change your memory formation, your speech, everything to that next level. So you would actually start in a linear fashion. So you start off low dosing for week 1, something like 25 or 50 milligrams Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Following week, work that up by 25 or 50 milligrams. You do that over the weeks until you get to a higher dose of like 150, 200. Once you find your tap out point, you do the reverse. And then you just do that pyramid effect throughout the weeks, because the whole point is what we're trying to do. As we are raising and taking the dose, we're trying to elevate our baseline too. We don't just want to take it to replace. And we're also infrequently throughout the week so that, again, we're elevating the baseline. So that's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, right? Have modafinil or whatever high tier player you want. Then you come in and say, okay, I have that driver. Biggest neuroplastic driver there, right, for this person. Now, Tuesday, Thursday, methylene blue comes in because we're also trying to drive the electron transport chain. We're trying to drive a lot of the health-based process of methylene blue. We're trying to clear neuroinflammation because if you're going crazy Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you're going to have to repair from that, but you still want to drive the performance. So then methylene blue would come in. Usually a lot of individuals in this role, it's like 20, 40 milligrams. That's usually a good spot. And again, there's always that biological inter-individuality. So we all respond different, right? We could work up the dose, but that's a good starting place for Tuesday, Thursday.
Okay.
Then the weekend comes in. And that's where we start off with about 1 to 5 milliliters of cerebral lysine intramuscular Saturday and Sunday morning. We usually back that up with the urolithin A because that'll recycle the mitochondria, the damaged mitochondria that we just pushed so hard throughout the weekday. We could also take a step back and say, okay, other mitochondrial peptides Monday through Friday to complement the neurogenic process. So if you push neurogenesis, like literally building your brain, it's energy consumptive. Right. It is hard to do. Like you get certain headaches if you're not taking enough food. Or
so what is like MOTC, SS31?
Exactly. Okay. Yeah. So MOTC, so it's mitochondrial open reading frame with a 12S RNA-C. If you know the name, you know what it does. So zoom into the mitochondria. They have their own mitochondrial DNA. Zoom into that DNA. It spits out something called short open reading frames. Those spit out MOTC molecules. So that's working from an inner mitochondrial aspect. So MOTC is cool as like a kind of an overall player. It has some cool AMPK cascade. It has some cool recovery cascades.
I loved it. I used it. I loved it.
Right? What'd you dose of that?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't remember what the dose was. That's a good question. I can't remember. It's been a while, but I felt really good taking it.
Okay, cool. So MOTC, right? So you have experience with that. What about SS31?
I also have used that. Okay. I like it, but MOTC was much more profound for me.
SS31 is on the mitochondrial side, I think so chemically strong. It's kind of like the preferred for organ healing, but you have to dose it high. like 50 milligrams, 100 milligrams, it gets expensive.
Okay.
So if you have like an organ failure, SS31 comes in to reverse that. Like if I have CKDs, so chronic kidney disease or liver failure, SS31 comes in for that.
Oh, wow.
But again, it's a higher tier compound. It's pretty expensive at 50 milligrams.
Okay.
You know?
Okay.
So then backtrack from there. We have all those players. If we're just trying to drive the mitochondria as hard as we possibly can and get some body composition changes, so the athletes or the entrepreneur in this conversation, because he wants to look good, right? That's where SLU PP332 comes in. That's going to hyperdrive. So it's an estrogen receptor related orphan receptor. It's that alpha one. It'll stimulate mitochondrial processes extremely hard.
This is the one Jay was raving about.
Yeah,
Sloop,
yeah.
he called it.
He sent us some.
Yeah, he did. He did.
So I started using it like 6 years ago before anyone else was. We're having it synthesized, implementing it. So I've had years and years of data and no one like ever thought it was cool. And then someone made a video like a year ago and now it's cool. So I'm like, cool, it's finally out there. Like, it does. I've seen it reverse a lot of ocular dysfunction. So people are losing their sight. I've seen it drive up spermatogenesis. So increasing fertility. We can see it directly driving anabolism, directly driving beta oxidation.
They call it the exercise peptide. Exercise mimic peptide is what I read articles say.
And it does so much more than that. It does so many cool things from every single aspect. So like SLU is amazing, but remember, it's chemically strong. So the chemical signals it sends is drastic. If you take too many of any of these mitochondrial peptides, what does it do? That mitochondrial ATPase will spin. So if let's say this is a normal spin rate, right? If you hyperspin it, what happens? You'll throw off some oxidation. You'll throw off some reactive oxygen species. That's normal in ATP production. It has to be like that. But if you spin it too hard, you spin off more reactive oxygen species. So the peptides, the mitochondrial push right now in the longevity community, it should be massive because that's how we're going to heal our system, right? But if you overspin those by taking SS31 and MOTC and SLU and you just fill in the blank with mitochondrial peptide X or whatever, it's going to overspin and cause the negative opposite effect.
And what does that feel like?
Yeah.
You feel stimulated. It's like when you had too many cups of coffee, too many days in a row. So you're overly stimulated. You are pretty lethargic as an overall rule. You can't think straight. Brain
That's what
fog.
happened to me with SS31.
I got headaches from it.
I took too much SS31 because, I don't recommend my listeners ever do what I do, but I tend to, be a little bit of a cosmonaut. And I did take more and more, and then I got bogged down, and I felt lethargic. And I'm more sensitive to these mitochondrial supplements. So
which is good.
Yes.
So that tells me your mitochondria are already spinning and functioning properly.
Good.
So that's kind of your spectrum of gauge. Like if you want to really check your mitochondrial health, take these mitochondrial peptides. If you have to take a lot, more than likely your mitochondria need a little bit of help.
Got it.
And like with SLU, it's actually super interesting. I've had individuals approach me and I'm working with them now. They were taking like 100 milligrams. We take it in micrograms. Usually the dose is like 100 to like 500 micrograms.
They were taking milligrams?
100
Oh
milligrams.
my God.
So
that's like, what is that? 100,000 times more than
people with deep pockets that just want to see what happens, shuts down testosterone production, atrophy the testicles in like 3 days, pull down DHT, estradiol, interleukin 6 pulled down and tanked, and then HSCRP shot up. So you had that reverse immune response. You had dermatitis, you had swollen lymph nodes. Like, it's crazy. Yeah, I like destroy these people overnight. And I'm like, yeah, because you took like 100,000 times a dose, So usually the dosage for SLU, you start off with 100 micrograms. Every other week, work up by 100. Everyone has their own response. Most people are like 100, 150 micrograms. Some people be upwards of a milligram. I had some Olympic athletes at like 2 milligrams, but they're just different species. They do not metabolize these compounds the same.
Got it. 8 Sleep is the most advanced sleep system you'll find anywhere. By the way, you can get it for $350 off. Click right here.
How much does and I know that you obviously speak to this too, is like, how much does this compare to good night's rest, balanced nutrition, like good programming exercise-wise? Like
everything we're talking about is the complement. If you don't have the basics down,
of course,
good water supply, high food quality, the right light, all the blue light, right? Yeah. If you don't have those basics down with sleep, stress management, a good life, a good family love, like if you look at all the longevity research, anyone lived to be over 100 years old, had family, or had a loved one, could have even been a dog. But that connection and a purpose to live every day, that's why all those people were living to that age.
Yeah.
So you have to have all those basics down. To me, those are the basics. Then you bring in supplements.
Yeah.
Then maybe peptides. Then maybe hormones or whatever. But it's the complement. It takes us to this super physiological level though. So you won't be able to do this stuff without them, but they also work 100 times better if you already have the basics down.
right.
Now, is that so? Like you're helping somebody, and is that what the conversation kind of sounds like? Is do your clients almost have to earn the right to get the peptides and the stacks and everything like that? First, I need you to do these, check these boxes, then I'll give you that. How do you do it?
So when people work with me, the initial program's like a 25 or 30 page PDF usually. So we'll have initial goals, right? We'll have our training, we'll have our aerobic work. In the aerobic, we'll say cardiovascular work as a whole, there's not just the traditional list. So I always call it proelastic cardio because you're using it to increase the elasticity of your heart, right? You don't want the blood hitting against the heart atrial wall. You want it to give. So we're increasing cardiac strength, those parasympathetic beta oxidative walks, which is nasal breathing, outside, low heart rate, low arousal, practicing gratitude, just enjoying life and smelling the air and
just a nice walk.
Exactly. A nice walk. That's all it is. It's working that parasympathetic beta oxidative system. So we're using stored fat as fuel during that period while driving all those other health cascades of just being outside, the sun exposure, all that cool stuff. Then the other aerobic work is going to be some kind of a HIIT work. So blow your lungs out, far end spectrum glycolysis, so you can handle oxygen better, which allows you to handle subatomic particles better, which then allows you to dismantle and cleave all your supplements, peptides, and compounds more efficiently. So then there's the nutrition, then there's the over-the-counter supplementation, then there's like the pharmaceutical section if that person is going to be going that route. And then at the bottom, it is how you should breathe throughout the day, nasal breathing, the sun exposure work, some grounding work. It's really trying to hit from every single level. Yeah. And then we'll tweak it based on the person. But to me, I try and include everything in programming. I don't like being the person that just does one thing because if everything else isn't taken care of, things don't always work that well. They don't have the basics.
I'm so glad you said that because I had a feeling that someone who'd be listening right now, we're like 30 minutes in and we're like talking like all the pharmacology stuff. It's I guarantee this dude didn't get to this level and it doesn't check all the other boxes first because I don't care how great what we've learned. That stuff still matters.
We broke down the stack for the entrepreneur, which I thought was great because you're cycling, you're alternating, you're timing with workload and so it just makes sense that you would do it that way, just like you would with a workout or with a diet or
it's all the
even
same.
Sleep and rest. All right, what about the bodybuilder or somebody's like, I want to build an incredibly aesthetic physique. What does that look like? What are their priorities when it comes to some of those things?
Okay. So in that whole physique-based world, there's always going to be neurological input. So no matter what, if you're looking at building muscle tissue, right, getting the most out of your workouts, you need to make sure that contractility, that ability to get every quality rep out of every single set is as high as possible. So that's where things like alpha GPC come in to just donate more raw acetylcholine so you can fire tissues better. Carnitine could come in, so injectable carnitine paired with the choline actually to get the choline preparation as well. The carnitine is going to drive up the androreceptor binding affinity and constant. So your androgens, endogenously or exogenously taken, they're now going to be able to find the receptor faster, dock, conformationally change the geometry, send its signal, undock faster, find another receptor faster.
So let's pause right there for a second. So carnitine, I'm familiar with.
Unpack all that.
Yeah, so carnitine increases the either availability or density of your androgen receptors. This is where testosterone attaches to. In other words, if you can increase the density of your androgen receptors, your current testosterone is now like more testosterone. Yeah. And carnitine's been shown to do this in studies. Carnitine L-tartrate, I think, is the one that I've seen in the studies. You're talking about injectable L-carnitine.
Yes.
Is there a big difference, or can you take oral?
So all carnitine's awesome. What degree of chemical action do you need? If you're taking the oral preparation, it's only going to work so well because you have to pass through different gastric layers to get that end chemical fate. And then there's also just, if you try and like equate bioavailability, there's still only so much physiological action you can drive. You inject it, it takes the brakes off of that. Your body has to accept it. It's being directly infused into highly perfused muscle tissue, tons of blood, tons of oxygen, so you can work up that number like crazy. You also don't get the same TMAO, so trimethylamine oxide, the thing in your gut to basically thrive off of carnitine and choline and drives inflammation. You only get that if you take it orally. If you inject it, you don't get that because it's not going to the gut. It's going to the working tissue.
It's going direct. And then is timing carnitine before a strength training workout a good idea then in that case because you want to maximize the androgen receptor effect?
Oh, you're going to love this. You can do it a couple different ways. You can take carnitine before the workout to drive VO2 max, to drive your ability to partition nutrients, to drive overall substrate utilization and the just better effects anabolically of the workout, also anticatabolically. If you're in the strength community, not the bodybuilder, or say a powerlifter, when they're training in that alactic range, what builds up post-workout? Acetyl groups, right? So those acetyl groups will sit there and you don't start recovering just because you stop training. You only start recovering whenever you get parasympathetic, whenever you pull down ventilation, when you clear acetyl groups and generally restore glucose homeostasis. So clearing the acetyl groups is massive. You can take carnitine post-workout to clear those acetyl groups. So you can, in the strength-based community, start recovering faster if you move carnitine post-workout.
Got it. Now, somebody if somebody uses injectable L-carnitine and they do it pre-workout, do they notice anything in that workout?
Yeah.
What do they notice?
The vast majority of people, you'll start to notice, first of all, increased sweat rates. You start to increase your overall ability to just contract with the muscle. You'll get easier pumps because it's literally putting fuel where it needs to go.
Okay.
So you're storing more glucose as intramuscular glycogen, storing more amino acids and nitrogen as, go ahead.
By the way, for people, I was just going to say, carnitine is not some strange, exotic anything. It's an amino acid.
Yeah.
It's an amino acid. So it's one of the amino acids that makes up protein. It's been a supplement forever.
Yep. Literally, literally forever.
Yeah, that's one of the first, if I can think back, one of the first supplements you could buy.
Yeah.
Because they knew of its importance in fatty acid metabolism. So it was actually a fat loss supplement back in the day in the 90s was when I remember.
And it works amazingly for that.
Yeah.
So remember that whole carnitine family, it's that transporter across the layers to get intra-mitochondrially. It'll donate and it'll drop off that fat in the mitochondria and then it'll recycle again. Right. It can also go through a different cascade to drive the neurological effects like the acetyl L-carnitine, like the Alcars for the neurological side of things.
Right. Okay, so L-carnitine, I think you mentioned something else with that. What else?
Choline.
Choline, there you go. Alpha-GPC in particular.
Yeah, or you could do the injectable preparation with your carnitine if you get that kind of a product.
Right.
Did you take an alpha GPC? Did you take one?
I've taken Alpha-GPC many times. I used to take it with, I love it with caffeine.
Are you taking the left-handed enantiomer?
Not sure.
So if you look on the back, it'll say L-alpha-glycerol-phosphocholine. That's the full actual that enantiomer that has the full amount. So if it's that and it says 300 milligrams, it's 300 milligrams. If it doesn't say that and it's the actual race mixture, it's only half.
Got it.
So most people start with like
Is that the mirror?
milligrams.
Is that because it's like a mirror molecule and only one side is really active and the other one isn't?
Yep, that L side, that left side.
Got it. Interesting. Okay. So L-carnitine, alpha-GPC, we're talking about the bodybuilder. All right, what else?
So we have that driving baseline interjection in the workout, baseline anabolism, all that kind of fun stuff. If we then kind of look back to one more thing in the workout to improve your ability to contract, because again, anabolism and your ability to feel the quality of those repetitions is pretty high in my books, Neopep comes in. So N-phenylacetylprolyglycine ethyl ester, that'll drive up motor cortex function like crazy. So now all of a sudden you're getting more efficiency out of every single rep.
Wait, Neopep, is that N-O-O-P-T?
Yep.
Oh,
N-O-P-E-P-T.
I use that all the time.
Yep. It's awesome, right?
That's a Russian peptide for nootropic.
Do you do intranasal or oral?
No, just a capsule.
Intranasal will drive that neurochemistry fast and your ability to focus. I actually have some in my bag, but I don't want you to use it because you get your nose on it. But if you use the intranasal, it'll drive that focus during the workout more than anything else out there.
So people who are into nootropics, Noopept is like, I don't know how many hundreds of times more powerful than like piracetam or the racetam kind of category of peptide nootropics, correct?
And even cooler than that is it'll ameliorate glutamate toxicity. So if you're taking the traditional coffee and pre-workout and you're stressed and you're fighting with your fiance, whatever, it'll start to clear those glutamate levels. So then you start to have what? Better neurological action, which means better training, overall less stressors, and it acts as an anti-catabolic aid neurochemically.
And are you recommending this for the bodybuilder pre-workout, all of this?
Definitely, yeah. Okay. And again, though, if we're trying to have motor learning, so if you're trying to bring up a lagging body part, only do it on those days.
Oh.
So we would
only sync with our focus days. How sick would that be to prescribe that?
No. By the way, for people listening, like lagging body parts oftentimes are a result of the fact that you just simply can't connect.
Poor connection.
Exactly.
You can't connect to that muscle very well. And so what you're saying is you're taking compounds to augment the process of connecting. So now when you squeeze your glutes, you feel them more when you're hitting your lagging body part, which might be glutes.
And you can potentiate that. So I'm a big fan of doing something, then taking something. Or you have to do an action if you're going to take a supplement. So to me in this world, if you would even just do like a little journal, it doesn't even matter. Cursive writing with your non-dominant hand, it's going to drive up both left and right hemisphere connectivity. And then over time, it's going to drive up those neural cascades, drive more neuroplasticity. So before the workout, you take your Neuropept, you write a couple sentences. I like to say what I'm grateful for or whatever, because it's just cool. It's cool to put it on paper. Love my kids, love my dogs, wife's freaking awesome. Like, do that with a non-dominant hand in cursive. That nonstop. So that's why our society is starting, the IQs are dropping because they stopped teaching cursive in school. Wow. Seriously. And that now it's not even just normal writing. What are we doing? We're texting. And now if you get a text from someone, it's 17 different texts all saying one sentence.
Yeah.
Because no one's completing the thought. Exactly, yeah. It's getting worse and it's driving that neuroatrophy. So now our prefrontal cortex, which was supposed to mature at 25, which is like people, you find yourself, you become an adult then, now it's 35, 45. I did one governmental project back in the day that I don't like that I did it, but I want to bring it up. I thought the goal was to bring that prefrontal cortex maturity down. So I thought we were trying to make humans able to
Adults
evolve.
sooner, yeah.
Exactly. Trying to make sure people are maturing earlier on in life. And then project ended, got paid. It was basically, we're going the opposite with it. Thanks for your help. Wow. So literally pushing 25 to 45 was their goal. When I thought we were trying to push 25 to 20 or 18.
Why?
So,
What?
Why? Better consumers, easier to manipulate. Yeah.
Same thing with all the lights.
Yeah.
Right?
Wait. What do you mean with the lights? Dude?
Yeah.
Now I know why Jay likes you so much.
Yeah. I mean, like, so I don't want to, I hate the conspiracy theory stuff, but when things add up, you're kind of like,
Yeah, but wasn't
Okay.
that so? Okay, I saw something. Okay, we have to go here then if you know information about this, because I meant to share this with you guys. So that the original the reason why all our shit is blue light, and also it was an original government project, and they were trying to train the brain for something. I can't remember, and the guy actually spit out the title of the project name, and that's when we figured out that is the reason why all of our phones, all of our lights, all have that blue light base.
so they sell it as energy. What do they call it? They call it energy reserve, where you're basically saving energy so you spend less money.
Yeah.
So they're changing that actual energy that's given off by the bulb. So they're changing the spectrums of light to save energy. That also means the energy that's not given off by the bulb is not being absorbed by our bodies. So those incandescent lights, the chicken lights, things like that, they're like the chicken lights are like full spectrum, pretty much. They cost more money to run because it's giving off more, but that's energy we need. It's lightly heating the house. Who cares about that as much? But it's driving all those mitochondrial cascades. The reason why tumor growth is so big, so we'll wrap it out. There's so many things to go down. Our melatonin production, it's like 5 or 10% in our brain, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone thinks it's higher. It's like it's all in the brain. No, it's in our mitochondria. And it happens by infrared exposure during the day. So our melatonin pool, mitochondria-wise, is not being released during the day. What do people do that have tumors? They take a lot of melatonin during the day because when melatonin's high, tumor growth gets suppressed. So as the years
it's anti-cancer. Melatonin's very well established anti-cancer.
Exactly. Very well established. So you start to see, okay, we have people who are trying to elongate how long it takes to mature your prefrontal cortex. We now have these lights which are getting less and less diverse and more specific. We are then avoiding. So we're in a state of basically near infrared light depletion, if we want to call it that. We're in that debt. What that does is that handles all those mitochondrial actions. If you go outside, for example, like any time of the day, you could be bundled up in a bunch of layers. It's going to traverse all those layers. If you go out, it's going to interact with your mitochondria, your bone, all that fun stuff. If you go out in like a lush environment where there's greenery and sunlight, it's going to reflect off the greenery and hyperpotentiate into your cells. The reason why you do cold therapy partially is to get your mitochondria to release the light that they're holding on to, which is infrared. So you start to paint this picture of you want to control people with lights. A different project I work on, one of the individuals that was also in that group did some of that stuff, the torture-based world. And what they would do is they would have people in extreme blue light, completely surround exposure for 48 hours. They would then go through a process of only darkness for like a couple minutes at a time. They then hit them with like green light or something like that, and then back to blue. But the blue overexposure and the depletion of any near infrared is what they were doing. And if you do that for, weeks on end, what would happen? You'd walk into the room, they had no idea what day it was, who they were, but if you would ask them a question, they'd answer because things aren't firing the way they were supposed to. And that's just like, there's tons of examples like that throughout history. And then you get into the conspiracy theory of they're changing the lights to control us, but then you also have all the stuff with technology. It's like, okay, there's a lot of controlling going on, Could
it be just an accident? In other words, you have this ideology that says save energy at all costs. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to produce these light bulbs, even though it's costing us more because it's reducing productivity. It's our health is getting worse, but they don't look at that. They just look at one part of the equation, which is saves energy and push it forward. And then it just so happens that this is actually shitty light.
So
could it be that?
I like to think it's that way. Okay. I mean, honestly, like I see the best in everyone. I think everyone's really good at their heart.
Yeah.
And I'm never the cynical. I'm always the optimist. So to me, I like to think that.
Yeah. It's like the whole fluoride thing. Like we now know fluoride lowers IQ, even though we've been saying it forever and they call us crazy. But it really was just, it can reduce cavities and there's not harmful. And now we have a great way to dump it so we can get rid of it. And not necessarily we want to make everybody dumber. Yeah. That just happens to be the side effect. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, it's even like water. Like I think water was unintentional, meaning, right, you find it in nature, top of the mountain, it's rolling over these rocks. What's it doing? It's following. It's having a left and right spin. What that spin does, so if you like a glass of water, it's not like H2O here, H2O there, H2O here. It's big bands of H's and big bands of O's. So these hydrogens and oxygens look like a wreath. As you're going down the mountain, rolling over rocks, picking up minerals and cool stuff like that, it's pulling them apart. They want to live together. They create a charge. So they start to structure and have living action. And you can prove that because water's reactive. Meaning if you jump out of an airplane or a building off how far up into water, what happens? It's like hitting concrete. You don't fall into water, you get smashed. If lightning hits it, it tenses up before the lightning hits it. Because water in its natural state is literally living. It's reactive, or else it couldn't have that kind of communication system. So in society today, though, what do we have? Pressured pipes. Straight pipes, no right spin, no left spin. No going for rocks and picking up minerals. It's first desanitized and cleaned, which is cool. We get to our house and we clean it again with RO, which is fine because we're having like in this community, everyone's like remineralizing their food. And so that's not as big of a deal. It's still coming out though, basically dead. Like it's still coming out not acting like it should. So what we do is you can restructure it. There's a lot of cool like natural action. They have like Jonathan Butts and the guys over there, well, he actually passed. They made some amazing products. There's a lot of other good products out there, but all you're looking to do is restructure your water so it can act like it's supposed to be in nature. But going back to the whole problems of our society today, why does everyone have cancer, diabetes, all these failure problems? Why are athletes? So athletes are even held back. So could you imagine the athlete that comes to Alex over here and we're changing their training, nutrition, supplementation, their water, we're changing their light, we're changing all these things. You act like you should have been acting this whole time. It's not like just that one peptide. There's all these other little things that people are missing.
Yeah. But Paul Chek used to talk about structure.
Yeah, I was just my mother-in-law does. She has a bottle that's like, and she actually even like says stuff into it, right? So I don't know if you.
Oh no, it's true. It's true though.
Okay,
the affirmation.
So she.
No, there's weird
she'll
studies on
she'll
that.
have she has a bottle of water that's been recharged,
Snowflakes
has
and
a positive affirmation that's put on it, and like I drink out of it every time I go over there. Makes me feel good. You know what I'm saying?
It's so real though. It's what so in my shoe I actually have a heel capsule from Lila Quantum. I could because these pants don't have pockets. I don't know why they have them like that. But that heel capsule, it has spheres that are basically infused with quantum energy. All we're looking at in the quantum world is spin. So if we kind of go back in the energetic world in that conversation, right? If I came in today and I was like grumpy and like making fun of your hair or like that energetic transfer, you're like, I don't like this guy. It's going to dampen the mood, right? Versus me coming in happy, energetic, excited, everyone's mood's getting better, right? That's just an oscillatory change. So we're not talking about, subatomic particles, we'll get below them. Everything spins at a certain frequency. So that Cheeto is spinning at the wrong frequency. Yeah, there's some other crap in there, but it's not identical to the spin our biology accepts. So we eat that Cheeto, it causes all the upstream inflammation, oxidation, and everything else that clogs your arteries or gives you a heart attack versus having sweet potato, chicken, like whatever traditional healthy food you want to say there, it's just spinning at a better frequency. Yeah. That's all it is.
Hey, sorry to interrupt. We have a free guide titled Understanding Your Mood, Stress, and Sleep. It tackles all of those things from a health and longevity perspective. It's a totally free guide. So just click on the link at the top of the description below. You know what I find interesting about all this? Because, I would have a tendency back in the day to hear you listen to what you're saying. Cool, peptide. Cool, that's cool. Oh, now he's talking about this other stuff. Oh, I'm not going to listen to that. But what's interesting is that so many things now that we've now accepted were regarded as crazy. And 15 years ago, I remember, look, I owned a wellness studio 15 years ago, 20 years ago. And I had a young lady in there that she was really on the cutting edge. And I remember her talking about leaky gut syndrome. And she would refer to leaky gut syndrome. And I used to train a lot of doctors. These were surgeons. And they would hear her talk in the background. They'd roll their eyes. Oh my God, what is she talking about? What is this, another crystal thing or what's happening, whatever? Well, they now call it intestinal wall hyperpermeability. That's the actual medical term for leaky gut syndrome. I brought up fluoride.
We have a peptide to fix that, by the way.
Sorry?
We have a peptide to fix
what
that,
do you fix that with?
So if you look down that entire cascade, lorazepam acetate will tighten those junctions to get loose and leak out inflammatory proteins.
Oh, interesting.
Sorry to interrupt.
Very good. Yeah, no problem.
Tool to fix everything.
Yeah, but my point is a lot of the stuff that we now accept was all regarded as insane or crazy. And so you can look into structured water, whether you believe or not it's good for you or not. It's true that water can be structured versus not. You can actually see this when you examine it. You can also
the dark microscope stuff.
Yeah. You can. Yeah. So there is a difference is the point. And one of them is how it appears in nature and one of them how it doesn't appear in nature. And so I think it's a fair judgment, whether you believe it or not, to say if I had to bet money, it's probably going to be better the way humans evolved drinking it is what I would say. All right, back to the bodybuilder.
Yeah,
All right.
sorry.
What else are we taking? What else the bodybuilder taking?
So we have carnitine, choline, we have Noopept. Usually there has to be a good insulinogenic driver. So maybe it could be the exogenous insulins of the world or something like that. More so than the nutrient partitioning. What it'll do pre-workout is, first of all, it'll drive mTOR-C1 directly. So that PI3K AKT cascade downstream will push anabolism.
Okay.
It'll also offshoot that FOXO cascade, and that'll manage anti-catabolism. So you're taking something that stops you breaking down too much muscle tissue and builds more.
Now, aside from exogenous insulin, because you're referring to insulin, which by the way, a lot of people don't know is more anabolic than almost any other hormone, could they do something that's non-hormonal to help that?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Have a huge carbohydrate meal.
Okay.
Get that pancreas working. Dump out some insulin.
And then go lift.
Exactly.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
even Gemina sylvestre, I always pronounce that wrong.
Yes,
That'll
yes.
release insulin from the actual pancreas.
Okay.
So you'll start to just be, so intra-workout, so that shake basically. If you had that intra-workout, you have your glucose intra-workout and your amino acids, what are you doing? You're hyperinsulinemic from the carbs and you're hypoamino acidemic from the EAAs.
Driving the amino acids into the...
Exactly. That environment is the most anabolic environment out there.
Right.
When you do that chronically in the bodybuilding world 24/7, it can also lead to some negative inflammatory side effects.
Right.
But that's where you're looking at,
But you also have more insulin sensitivity from strength training, so it's a good time to time it.
Good time to time because also glucose is going up anyway because you're training.
Okay, all right.
know?
So anything else? What are they? What about peptide-wise, growth hormone releasing peptide, anything like that?
Yeah, so everything in the growth hormone world is amazing. Going back to how much chemical pressure do you need? You could go with the traditional. So in the body, how it works is you have that arcuate nucleus. It'll go downstream, interact with those hypothalamic releasing factors, and then it'll drive up that growth hormone releasing hormone, and you get that action into the blood and the target tissue. If you take an exogenous growth hormone peptide, it'll stimulate that process harder. If you take the exogenous hormone in a vial, that's a 22 kilodalton variety of growth hormone. In our body, we have a 22 kilodalton, a 20 kilodalton, a 17, a 15, oligomers, heterodimers, homodimers. So we can take the peptide to release all. There's peptides to release enzymatic action of growth hormone, or the exogenous growth hormone that drives the entire process and overrides it, but it's only a 22 kilodalton variety. So you have tons of options. If you go the exogenous growth hormone route, has the most amount of chemical pressure because you're not relying on your body to produce its own growth hormone, but also more side effects if you work the dose up.
Yeah.
So you can do different combinations.
What do you like peptide-wise for growth hormone releasing peptides? I've used testosterone, ipamorelin. I've used
IPAM's
ibutamoren.
awesome, isn't it?
Which one?
IPAM.
Yeah,
Ipamorelin.
I like it. But, so I like the feeling of pumps and strength and size. Ibutamoren just crushes that for me.
Oh, MK.
Yeah, the most.
So you're gonna love this. So MK drives up the enzymatic action of all growth hormone reception.
That's why.
So no other peptide out there does it. So they'll label it as a secretagogue or this or that. I don't care about the labels anymore. To me, it's what does it do action-wise? It's the only product out there that'll drive the enzymatic action. So you could literally take exogenous growth hormone Monday through Friday and MK on the weekends to drive the enzymatic system on the weekend and to override the system Monday through Friday. Wow. MK is amazing to drive. It'll drive REM sleep like crazy.
Yeah,
it'll drive that nitrogen retention, like, 10 milligrams, 25
I slept
milligrams.
so good on it.
Yeah, you're full 24/7 too, and you get hungry. So
I
you
get
eat more.
8 pound swing with me for.
Right.
For
Did you
MK.
stay lean? Did you get any fluid?
Yeah, a little bit of fluid. My hunger goes up too, but
Yeah,
because
partially it.
Yeah, but the pumps on it are just insane.
Right.
Yeah.
You get a pump just like writing.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Any? What about the healing peptides? Any favorite stacks? I just tore my hamstring and on vacation, and BPC, thymosin beta. I'm using those.
Do you want to talk about your hamstring now or later?
Yeah, no, let's go to it.
Okay, so we'll sidestep from the bodybuilding conversation. So I tore my quad. It was a grade 3 tear, almost off the bone.
Oh.
Recovered it in 4 weeks. I actually did it moving. And I'm kind of like, I got 3 kids, another one on the way. I have work. I want to train. Like, I just don't have time for this. So I'll just go with one of my extreme protocols. So first of all, if you look at this healing-based world, the sooner you get to it after the injury, the faster recovery happens. So what you do, like technically, if you have to get surgery pre-op, it determines how you recover faster post-op. If you're avoiding surgery like I did, you can just move the muscle back to the bone, get it to basically adhere again and regrow. So in this world, you first of all have to upregulate growth hormone receptors and reception. So BPC and TB work amazing by themselves. If you pick up the underlying subsystems, they're going to work that much better. So there's this insulinogenic, somatropic, and androgenic axis. What that means is growth hormone, insulin, and androgens have to be balanced out to allow healing to drive as hard as you want it to be driven. So you have to balance out that axis. So that could be a TRT, HRT, or whatever, or even just traditional Tunga Dalis, like whatever it means for you. Androgens have to be covered. Insulin has to be covered. Could be exogenous, could be the Gemina, could be just eating more carbohydrates. And the growth hormone has to be covered. to drive up the sensitivity of these growth hormone receptors, which could be exogenous growth hormone or like the MCASE, anything like that. We have all those covered. Now the BPC and TB can work like they were supposed to. So all these peptides have literally 20 different actions plus. They do so many different things in so many different systems. I look at the primary. The primary reason why I would use TB is because it upregulates something called neonatal gene expression. So the genes that are there as if you had no damage at this point in time. So if you activate those, it's regressing you back to how you should have been. Once you upregulate the genes, then you take care of the tissue recovery. BPC comes in to do that pretty well. Change the vasculature, drive more blood flow into the area, more oxygen, and it goes from there. Then what could you probably do? Stem cell migration, pull some more stem cells into the area. You can get donation of red bone marrow, so that CXCR4, STF1 cascade, to literally push more stem cells from red bone marrow in the blood circulation. You could also do that. You could do it with a couple different products, but GHKCU, that blue copper peptide, it drives stem cell migration to a crazy degree. So right there, if you have it, so let's say, because like what I did, I tore my quad. Literally that night, I had a bolus of growth hormone and growth hormone peptides, more than I want to say on air, but dozens of vials, literally. Okay. And what I did, I occluded the area first. So extra blood flow, extra oxygen, extra nutrition. It hurt pretty bad, by the way. All these applications. And then I sat in front of red light and near-infrared light therapy to activate the mitochondria in that area. I would then rotate that off with test coils at the time, because I didn't have Lukovsky coils at the time, to alter the millivoltage change of those cells to start to push the muscle back to the bone. And then I would wrap it for an hour. And I would do rotating therapies for over those multiple weeks of near-infrared for an hour and then rotate with the different coils to change the voltage.
And in 4 weeks, it grew back?
Yeah, it's perfect. I tested it in Venice with Mark Bell. We were out there doing something for a different group, and I was like, if I'm gonna re-tear this, I'm not doing it in my basement. Then screaming, Lindsay, come help me! I want to go out big time. And we tested it, and it was perfect. No problems. 4 weeks later,
that's wild.
Squatting a couple plates again.
I didn't have access to all that stuff because I was on vacation. But when I got back, the thymosin beta, the BPC. And the ibutamorin. And I got to say, man, it was really bad. And I feel like probably in a week or two, I'll be able to work out. And I was a grade 3. It was grade 2, so it wasn't a full tear. Okay. But I had the bruising and everything, so I could see that there was some damage.
Where was it on the hamstring?
Semitendinosus.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 100% where it was. So very interesting. All right, let's go back to the bodybuilder. Let's finish that guy off.
Getting off track.
Yeah, let's finish that guy off.
So we talked about the growth hormone side of things, talked about the insulin, talked about the carnitine, choline, Noopept. Other than that, once you have that androgenic axis stimulated, which could be from the Tungat Alis or the Fedosias in the natural community, those work pretty dang well. We're never going to get super physiological, but just to top off those levels, I work with a lot of people that just take like testosterone, so some of the bioregulators just to drive that testicular production. Have that covered, or you're in the HRT plus route. Can't really talk about that too much like we talked about, but that's the world that then you have that androgenic side covered. That'll drive direct protein translation transcription, just anabolism, straight anabolism. You could choose basically from like traditional testosterone, which also pull in some oxygen and overall energetics, DHTs, which are more like, will drive insulin sensitivity, they can drive gut motility, they can drive that neurochemical expression, so you can motor learn faster, or 19-nors, which are really going to be like the retentive compounds. So you can push more glycogen, more ions, more nitrogen into one area.
Awesome. That's great. Wow, this is cool. All right, let's talk about GLP-1s for a second, because that's all the rage. Everybody's talking about them. They're, in my opinion, I think they're cultural shifting medical interventions for obesity. I think we'll at some point we'll look back and we'll remember before and after GLP-1s. Are they? I mean, I know the answer to this, but are they being used in the bodybuilding world? Are they being used pre-contest? Obviously, people are using for obesity and you lose a lot of weight. Doctors prescribe them. Are they being now used for pre-contest?
They're used in every single industry because they're absolutely awesome. They really, really are. So the problem in the bodybuilding community, or anyone who has to eat a high amount of calories, is if you slow down that gastric motility and inability to desire food, that can have the reverse effect. Yeah. So a lot of my IFBB pros that are 250 on stage type guys, or even a lot of the hypermuscular females, if you would take too much and drive down gut motility, it'll modulate the cocaine amphibian receptor in the brain, which that's why it actually pulls down your desire for food. It'll pull down your desire for alcohol or different drugs. And it's because of that modulation. If it has the reverse effect, it's not good for us. Yeah. But again, that's only if you have to eat thousands and thousands of calories to keep dieting. The majority of people, you can still take it low dose to drive up all the insulinogenic based actions. So it's improving your own system's ability to handle nutrients. You then can add that, GIP component to drive lipolysis and beta oxidation directly. You can then add the GCG. So that's the erythritide now as you kind of evolve through just GLP. Excuse me. There we go. all the way upstream to having the 3-stage agonist to now hyperstimulating the glucagon receptor, you'll take retatrutide and be hungry because it's driving anabolism drastically. So if you're a graduate,
are they using it to build muscle?
you can low dose it, microdose it, like 10 micrograms, 100 micrograms, a couple times per week. You can use it to drive up a lot of organ-based protection. You can drive that background dose of beta oxidation and fat loss, so you're staying leaner, and you're also building muscle tissue because of the anabolic interactions.
Wow. And so are they using them all the time or just pre-contest?
You can use it all the time, pretty much.
Okay.
No matter what, I'm a big fan of rotating them because if you look at what they all have to offer, if you hyperstimulate the glucagon receptor with retatrutide, I call it RID, so retatrutide-induced dysfunction. It works so well, it tanks interleukin-6. Interleukin-6 is not bad. If it's extremes in biology, that's where it's bad. If you're right in the middle, you're good. If you tank interleukin-6, you have that reverse immune response. And then you have the dermal problems. Then you have the lymphatic problems. You have all these issues. So to me, it's not that you need to do it year round, but it's a great therapy for longevity, especially if it's microdosed. Probably like everything else though, unless there's those baseline players, I like to bring things in and out. I don't like making the statement of take this every single day. Because there's a time and a place.
By the way, for people listening, like all the fears of GLP-1s causing muscle loss, which we've covered many times on the podcast, that's just a result of not strength training and just severely cutting your calories. Bodybuilders wouldn't touch the stuff if it caused muscle loss. And the data actually shows they're muscle sparing, right?
Exactly. And again, retatrutide drives anabolism directly. So you have that 3-stage agonist. We talked beforehand. I work with one group where we're bringing a 5-stage to the market.
What?
Which will modulate the IGF receptor and the androgen receptor. So if you also look, and they're again, like I'm not the first person to think about this. There's some old research. There was actually 2 drugs. One of the drugs back in the day was a GLP, and they had a SARM, which failed miserably. It just tanked HDLs. Like it was just like a chemical disaster, right? But the concept was there. They also had a GLP-1 and a melanocortin agonist. Because what did that do? It drove up more insulin sensitivity and more growth hormone-based reception, fixing that IGF problem. So it'll potentiate that. So these things have been done. They just didn't do them right or didn't apply them properly.
What did you say?
Melanocortin.
Okay, now these are the receptors that
they do everything. There's a lot.
Oh yeah, okay. So let's talk about that for a second because there are compounds you can take that stimulate those that make your skin darker, right?
Yep.
These are the receptors that help with melanin, but they do other things. There's a libido-enhancing peptide that attaches them as well. That's got some popularity, especially among women. Correct?
PT141.
Okay. What else do these receptors do?
Oh my gosh, so much. So melanotan-1, for example. Again, they do multiple things. That specific compound will actually drive a lot of, we'll say, energetic changes, and that's where people can have their conscious-based experience. So people over really high in the energetic-based world trying to elevate their own consciousness, melanotan-1 comes in pretty massively to open up that side of neurochemistry, neuroplasticity. We sidestep, go to melanotan-2. That's the one that can drive hematology. So if you have, if you're anemic, something like that, if you're trying to jack that up as an endurance athlete, which also is not banned by WADA, pretty cool. You can take that. It will directly drive insulin sensitivity. It will drive that overall libido and desire neurochemically. So there's a difference between driving like an erectile curve and a neurological libido driver, like an arousal, like I want to have intercourse. It'll do that neurologically, which then indirectly will drive better erections for males and females. Because remember, if you look at like female genitalia, exact same structure, just internally.
Right.
And those clitoral bulbs go back in for so many, it's just everywhere in there. So females have an erection just like guys, and you just obviously can't see because it's more internal.
Right.
So it can drive up all those erectile cascades dramatically. And then the PT141s will pretty much only drive those libido cascades. You get some nausea given how they're digested.
I was just going to say the dose on that, you got to be careful because it can make you nauseous.
Yeah, start off low. The intranasal ones are they're pretty popular. They work really good because again, you can low dose it and you can usually avoid that nauseous based effect.
What are your thoughts on artificial sweeteners? I mean, obviously you're in the bodybuilding world yourself. Artificial sweeteners super popular because there's no calories in them. Are you a fan, against, pro?
I'm honestly a fan of moderation of everything. To me, nothing is good or bad. I mean, yeah, there's healthier options out there. I don't think having the little artificial sweetener in your intra-workout shake or your protein powder, I don't think that's really the deal breaker. Okay. I think it's once you get into the heavily processed foods and that's all you're consuming. Because we as a species, like, again, everything we talked about today, how are we not dead? Right. Like, it's crazy to me that people are still living to be 60 in our environment. So our body is pretty resilient. Again, it's not that a lot of these are technically good for you, but a lot of them also aren't technically bad for you. So to me, it's more about moderation. And a lot of things kind of go back to moderation.
Okay.
I agree with that. I feel like the bodybuilder or the fitness person who's eating, 4 or 5 balanced whole food meals that has their, Diet Coke or their artificial sweetener or their protein bar that has
not a big deal.
Not a big deal. But it's the person who never eats whole foods, eats out 3-4 times a day, or eats out of a wrapper. But that's probably the person who's got an issue.
Every birthday party that we take our kids to, I have a piece of cake. I'm not going to be that dad. I want to enjoy it. I want to be part of my kids' lives. I'm also not having cake every single day.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with the kids. They're still kids. I want them to live and have life, but 95% of their food is basic, whole, micronutrient dense food. But that little 5%, if that's the thing that gets you, you're probably doing 10 other things wrong.
That's right. You mentioned earlier working with the team that works with RFK Jr. I don't remember a time when I was ever hopeful of government policy when it comes to health. The way he talks and the things he mentions, I'm like, okay, he sounds like he knows what he's talking about for the most part. Definitely in the context of previous administrations in government policy. Are you hopeful with some of with what they're doing, and what do you think about the whole thing?
So I work with a specific individual who's a party to that whole group. I've never actually worked with him directly or anything. What I'm helping that individual do is basically word things right so legislation can be passed properly.
Okay.
Because right now things aren't really determined in the peptide space. Like everyone knows, hey, these are good things. Here's the research. But also what's going on that's probably not going to be shown in the research for 10 decades because the funding's not there. So I'm helping more so on the terminology and breaking down how this can kind of be sold to the government and to the world for it to be accepted. And I'm so hopeful. I feel like our world is in a renaissance right now. And it's going to be 5 years. And over the next 5 years, there's going to be a drastic shift in pretty much everything.
Yeah.
And the sad part about that is the healthy, it's not going to be like, lower, middle, upper class anymore in 5 years. It's going to be the healthy that are living and essentially the sick that are dying in their 40s or 50s, whether that be lower caste because they can't afford peptide therapies, or our world is evolving. Like, why do you think this last strain of the flu was so strong? Because as a species, we're elevating. Like, look at all the technology we have now, all the medicines, all the peptides. As we're evolving, these pathogens, these bacteria, they don't want to die out. They're trying to live too, so they're getting stronger. So you have, again, the people that are avoiding a lot of the heavy dyes, avoiding a lot of the bad light exposure, like living a generally healthy lifestyle that'll thrive. And then that other subset is sadly going to die off. At least that's what I kind of see happening.
Where does your, because it's interesting to talk to you, you have this incredible wealth of knowledge with like pharmacology, but then you also have this almost woo-woo side of you where I've heard you say grounding. We talked about charging water.
My tinfoil hat's in my bag.
Yeah. So where does that come from? And it's rare. I mean, I remember when we first started this podcast, that was like one of the missions for us because we've been in the over 20 something years training people and seeing Western, Eastern medicine. And unfortunately in our country, I feel like we're so heavy Western and that we've just kind of dismissed a lot of this like Eastern medicine or the types of terminology they use to explain things. Where does that come? Like, how did you come to that conclusion that, there's something to this grounding and charging water and maybe what someone else would call woo-woo? Where did that happen for you?
I was running into problems with people that no one else was fixing. Whether it was the sprinter that just can't take that extra second off, or again, the heart failure or cancer patient that no one else was fixing. And so you start just looking at the baseline of why there's a problem in the first place. You break that down and look at energetics, for example, you start to realize, oh my God, grounding, what does it do? It donates electrons to your body. That's all it does. There's also pores at the bottom of your feet that pull toxins out through it. That's why when you take your shoes off and you've got sweaty socks, it stinks so bad because of those pores. They're so drastic. So just by grounding, you can pull out a lot of just those damaging particulates and donate electrons. Why do you eat fruit? Donates electrons. That's all they do. So if you understand the energetics of it, then you can just see, okay, how can I donate electrons? I can only eat so much fruit. Chemical signaling wise, fruit's awesome for you, but you almost can't eat so much fruit to like kill a cancer, for example. That would actually also fuel the cancer because they thrive on glucose. But it started there. It was just literally trying to find problems and you find different ideas. And like today, I am open to everything. If something works for someone, I want to know why. I want to know how you're doing it because there's validity there. Someone could disagree with me and I love that because to me, through their lens, they found some way to find success with something that I didn't find success. So how did you do that? Was it context specific? Did I do it wrong? Or what's really the lens they're looking through? What was the last thing that maybe you were skeptical about or that you had attempted, Western medicine, pharmacology at, and then you ended up realizing, oh, it was a missing grounding? What was the last thing that was like that where maybe you were trying to figure out and then it was something that you maybe wouldn't have thought of or pharmacology couldn't answer? It was probably about 2.5 years ago. And it was with dry fasting. because all the research on fasting is there. Even dry fasting, there's some scattered research.
So dry
there.
fasting is no food, no water.
Exactly. Yeah. And to me, it was not that I was against it, but I just didn't really see how I could implement it in certain scenarios. So if you look at your fat cells that'll dump out, triglycerides and hydrogen, you can make your own water via fat cell manipulation. So you'll donate that hydrogen, combine with oxygen, you create your own water. You can't do that forever, but you can get your own endogenous water. I started looking at this for the parasite world. Parasites thrive on their own glucose and our water. Parasites can't make their own water. So if you make just enough internal water, you can starve off those parasites. So what was it? I think this was back again. The Russians are one of those cool places where they were having people dry fast for like 2 days on, 1 day off, but they did it for days at a time. They were reversing cancers, killing parasites. They did it crazy though, because they would do a hard dry fast, not just a soft. So a hard dry fast means no washing your hands, no showers. Then you realize, showering, you get some water transversing through your skin. It drives lymphatic drainage. So that actually kind of worked against them. Whereas the soft dry fast, you wash your hands, you shower, but you just don't drink water. So it was probably that in the parasite-based world.
Wow.
Yeah, you must be a fan of all the Soviet era studies.
Yeah, they're so cool, right? They did some crazy stuff, but I mean, I'm glad we get to read it now.
Yeah, very cool. Well, cool. This was a lot of fun, my man. I'm glad you came on the show. I can see why Jay likes you so much.
I feel like we're just getting started.
Well, trust me, we are. Our personal thread with all of each other is going to really go. I already know it. I already know everyone's going to be hitting you up with like personal stacks and things they're going to want to do. We could probably sit on this and talk for hours of all the different protocols.
No, it's great, man. Is there anything that's really interesting you or exciting you at the moment?
I think so. I finally I paired up with Jay, actually. He has BioLongevity Labs, so I'm the head researcher formulating all that stuff. And right now, that's been like the latest development that I'm super excited about because I've been waiting because I've had people in the background synthesize compounds and stuff like that for years, but no one actually wanted to get into business with that I would like really trust. And we have a couple things coming out to the market that will, pretty much like reverse obesity. I had one, I don't think they're going to do it, but I had eye drops we could see in the dark. Again, I don't think I was going to buy that. So they turned me down on that.
Eye drops you can see in the dark.
Yeah, no, you just use chlorine, insulin, and DMSO, and you can deliver it. And you don't use it all the time, but you can see in the dark for like 4 to 6 hours.
Oh my God. Do you see demons as well? Like, I don't know. I'm just scared.
So why is it the military? Dude, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Did you try it?
Yeah, that's actually where I got all that from.
Okay.
I did a couple different projects.
Oh, okay, from the military.
Yeah.
Bro, that's crazy.
That makes sense. And they would be the ones that would be messing with that.
I'd buy that. You're not going to make them though?
I hope so. I said it in the group thread and no one replied to me. So usually, so we have that group thread.
I'll send a message to Jay. Dude, I want
these
eye drops in the dark.
Yeah, there's so many things like to potentiate NAD therapies, right? So we're coming out with a product for that because NAD could shoot to the right and drive all these longevity cascades. It can shoot to the left if you have high CD38, high NNMT enzyme levels, and fuel cancer cell growth or fuel senescent cell growth. So you can take some basic things to modulate that and to potentiate that. So that whole NAD sirtuin system gets upregulated crazy. So things like that, that's like the latest thing that I'm super pumped up about.
Yeah. What are you following? What's his, is it Bryan Johnson? Who's the longevity guy right now?
Oh, the dude that spends all the money.
I was curious if you were
he looks like a robot.
I think it's Bryan Johnson, right? Is that what it is?
I believe so.
Yeah, okay. So
if you see his pictures,
he just had a
super pale.
Yeah, okay, I remember.
He just had a Netflix series. I was just curious if you knew.
What's he doing now?
That's what I want to know if you knew like what exactly he's doing and what he's what we would consider the perfect example of somebody who's chasing longevity. Like he's checking all the boxes. So I thought maybe you knew of what he was doing, and I wanted to hear from you what you think are the big things that he's doing that's probably making the difference. But he did like Clothos therapy, if I remember correctly. He's done a lot of things. That is Bryan Johnson. That's who it is.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Again, I'm so bad at following people and keeping up with people, but I remember who that was.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but was he also against going outdoors and getting sun exposure?
It looks
right?
like it.
I don't. If that was him, I remember there was the whole like UV conversation. I think that was him, which I don't agree with. But I don't know if that's him.
Yeah, I don't think I agree with that either. I think we know how amazing the sun is for you. I think that's.
Oh yeah, he says he avoids the sun.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that doesn't. Weird.
Yeah. So right out of the gate, mitochondrial action, neurological development, prefrontal cortex hypertrophy, like things are getting down regulated when you're not in the sun.
Yeah.
Now I imagine he's probably supplementing with things like red light therapy and other things like that to probably counter what the negative effects.
But still, the problem with that though is it's still not full spectrum. So like red light's awesome, it's still narrow. Near infrared is still awesome, it's still narrow. So best case scenario, like you're simulating what would have happened.
Naturally.
Good.
I know you're trying to simulate something that's natural by piecing together a bunch of different things.
When you could just go out and get the real thing.
Yeah, exactly. So you do sunlight, during the days if you can, as much as you can, pretty much. And then at night you would do like something like it, because it also depends on where it's at. So again, back in the day when we were cavemen, it would have been fire in front of us. So you'd have a low exposure of that light, like the chicken lights or something like that, because it's pretty much full spectrum as well. But again, a lot of different ways you can go with light.
Not that you care or anything like that, but I mean, I think you would be a really cool person to actually break down what because he's going so viral. Everybody's paying attention.
Text him, tell him to hit me up.
All right. Because I think you would be a really cool person to go through his protocol and the things that you're like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Or I think that's smart. And then the things are like,
do you think chemical-based sunscreens were just a total grift? Like, hey, these help protect you from cancer.
Swing and a miss.
Yeah,
because it'll just generate more reactive oxidative damage on top of the skin. So you're basically blunting the beneficial and you are allowing the negatives. So you're literally driving the whole process of skin cancer and ROS overproduction. Like sunscreen actually potentiates that. So so again though, case in point for area, my wife and my children are very pale skin. They're very pale. So we have to slowly build up that solar callus by letting them get exposed to the sun. Yeah. And then over time, they don't have to use that sunscreen as much anymore. So sunscreen isn't inherently good or bad, but when you overuse it, to me, no one should really be using it.
Do you use the mineral-based ones then, the zinc oxide and titanium for them? Or?
I'm still not that big of a fan. I mean, yeah, that's what we use. But no matter what, ideally, we want just basic sun exposure on skin.
And build it up.
Exactly. Yeah, you build up that solar callus no matter who you are.
Yeah. So what does that look? This is actually a good conversation, because this is one of the challenges I have with my wife. She's like overly protective of him getting burnt in the sun. That's like and I'm like, dude, let's just cover him up or let him have a little bit and then pull him out. So what would that protocol look like, or what has that protocol look like for you right now? Because I know that I also can't just allow him to be in the sun for 3-4 hours and he's never been in the sun like that, because he will burn. So, and it's hard to probably get your kid who's playing in the pool for an hour to come out when he's in the middle of doing that. So do you give him a little bit of the sunscreen, or I mean, what does that look like?
You're going to love this. Okay. So in the training world, what is it? Progressive overload. Yeah, right. It's the same thing in the sun exposure world. Go out for 10 minutes and kick a ball around, come back in.
Yeah.
The next day, go out for 15 minutes. Whatever arbitrary number, it's that slow exposure over time. So on the weekends, you can't go to the pool for an hour and then come back in, or just do the first hour, exposed and then put on the sunscreen or the clothes or something like that. It's progressive. It's just slowly building up.
That's what I did with my kids.
That makes sense, because then it's like, because I'm like, shit, well, how do I deal with the time where like I didn't have, like, we just find, so I find out tomorrow, we're in the winter still, but let's say we're going to the pool tomorrow for 3 hours. I didn't have time to build that up. So that would make sense, is at least allow the first hour regular exposure, then put it on. And then the next time I do it,
that's what we did with ours, because we were in Hawaii and now we're my wife and I are both olive complexion, but still our kids are, if they're not in the sun, it's winter here. Yeah. So when we were there, it was like out in the sun a little bit. All right, come in, add some sunscreen. And each day we prolonged how long they were out for, and they got nice tans from it.
Yeah, that's all you need. You could even do like the red light therapy boxes, because at least it's more that dermal, like, so that's not as deep as a near infrared. Yeah. That's still that topical level, so you can at least slowly get this.
Oh, that's a great, because I have the infrared lights in my house, so that's a great idea.
But then it'll offset blue too.
But then Justin and Doug are screwed basically, right? So they can't just live in a cave.
What's wrong with you guys?
So pale.
We're just translucent.
Yeah, just slowly build it up. See what you can do. You can also do like, we talk about MT2 though. Melanotan 2 can build up that process and stimulate it. So if you take MT2 and don't get sun exposure, you get like orange, looks really ugly. So instead you just do that and get slow sun exposure.
And it helps increase the melanin production.
Yep.
Yeah. So there you go, bro.
All right. It's just, I don't want to be an orange man.
Yeah.
Take a little bit.
Try it out.
Well, great, man. This was a lot of fun, dude.
Yeah, Alex. It was a good time.
Thanks for coming on.
This won't be the last time.
We'll probably have you on again.
Yeah, we will absolutely have you on again.
Yeah, for sure.
Appreciate you guys having me on. It was fun.
Good time, bro.
All right. I know you liked that episode. If you did, check this one out. 30% body fat. For men, this is way too high. This is actually a bit high for women as well. So in today's episode, we're talking about how you can go from 30 to 10. What is 10% body fat? This is when you have a visible six-pack. Can you go from 30 to 10%? Yes, it's possible, but not if you guess along the way. So we're going to talk about how you can do that in today's episode.
Now, there's a huge range, right, of like body types.
Yes.
Some people can run a little bit heavier or a little bit higher body.